Jessica Wakefield is looking particularly evil on the cover of this book. Join me now for a little discussion of Sweet Valley High number 8, Heartbreaker. Hi everyone, I'm Rosie Blythe. I'm the author of the Princess Guide to Life book series, and on this channel we talk about everything from finances to spirituality to dogs. And today we're continuing our little series recapping all the Sweet Valley High books that I own. Today it is Sweet Valley High number 8. So I like to try and dress according to the theme of the cover at least. I don't have a top like Jessica. I don't know if this is a dress, top, swimsuit of Jessica's. It's very nice though. Maybe swimsuit, it's kind of shiny material, or it could be like a satiny dress. So I thought two-tone. It has a suggestion of waves, which is very fitting for any book that involves Bill Chase. So yeah, I'm going for a beachy theme today.
So I did say Jess looks particularly evil on this cover, and I think she does. But what's interesting is the original pose by the models is quite different. And we also discover it was a bikini. But I feel like they based her face on someone else, because something about it is screaming 1930s femme fatale to me. And you know when something is just like eluding your brain? I am sure this expression and pose is exactly like something I've seen, like an old movie poster or something. And it's driving me nuts trying to work out who this reminds me of. So if you can help me figure it out, please do. I've found these pictures of Barbara Stanwyck, Marlene Dietrich, Greta Garbo, even Ginger Rogers, and I cannot work out who could have been the inspo for this cover, but I'm sure it was somebody like this.
So if you haven't read the last book, Dear Sister, you might want to watch the recap for that first. But basically Elizabeth was in a coma. When she came out she was a different person, and Jessica for once was the twin who was kind of doing things to help the other twin. So when Elizabeth double booked 2 dates, Jessica kindly went on one of them for her. It was with Bill Chase, who she had a bit of a vendetta against because he turned her down once. And that's the worst thing you could do to someone like Jessica. So let's dive in. So just a few little personal notes dedicated to Marion Woodruff. Now, if you have read more of the Sweet Valley High books, or if you're aware of the lore around it, you'll know that Sam Woodruff was a very popular, much loved character. So I think that's kind of sweet. Somebody involved in this knew somebody called Woodruff, and they not only dedicated a book to them, but they named a character after them, which is very nice, isn't it? So the opening line of this book is, "Kiss me," Jessica purred seductively in Bill's ear. "Maybe we can get it right this time." Which is a pretty intriguing first line to any book, isn't it? They are rehearsing a school play together. They're doing Splendor in the Grass. I love the way Sweet Valley books always put like a little bit of culture in, because obviously like the school curriculum is different in the US from what it is in the UK, so I used to learn a lot. Bill is looking at Jessica with those deep, deep blue-green eyes, the spun gold hair that drifted silkily about her shoulders, her cameo of her face. Perfect down to the adorable dimple that showed up in one cheek when she was smiling. And this is really mean, but it is funny. So they're trying to do the kissing scene in front of everyone at rehearsals, and Jessica starts laughing, and then she says, "Oh, sorry, Bill, I couldn't help it. You looked so funny, all puckered up like that." Which is so mean, but I'm sure it would be very funny if you were there. So basically, Jessica liked Bill to start with. He turned her down. She saw it as revenge to go on a date with him, and then she somehow knew that that would be enough to get him to fall in love with her. So he's now like following her around like a little puppy, and she's like, "Haha, you love me." And that's essentially the plot of this book. But we do have a subplot, because Elizabeth is shocked to see her boyfriend Todd with his arms around another girl. But he's like, "Oh, hey Liz, come over and meet my friend." Which is just never a good sign, is it, when a guy does that? And she meets this girl, Patsy Weber. And it says, "Patsy smiled, revealing glorious white teeth and a charming dimple in her heart-shaped chin." She's wearing a straw slim skirt. Straw slim skirt? Is that a thing? What does that mean? I'm not familiar with that term. I don't know if it means something. Belted with a wide leather sash around her tiny waist and delicate high heels, her coppery red hair was cut fashionably short in back, with a tumble of curls that dipped over her forehead. A pair of slanted green eyes regarded Elizabeth with friendly interest. I mean, I don't know about you, she sounds slightly freakish to me. That's so mean, isn't it? I'm so mean. That hairstyle of like a sort of a bob, I guess, but it was sort of like short up the back and then it was like longer at the front. I think that was really popular in the 80s. It's not a hairstyle I've ever particularly cared for. shall we say. No offence if you have that hairstyle, I'm sure it looks great on you. But yeah, it's just not my favourite thing. I guess a lot of 80s hairstyles weren't particularly flattering. They were very much of their time. So of course we always have the descriptions of how the twins look identical and beautiful, but they're very different. One of my favourite lines, Elizabeth was older only by 4 minutes, but sometimes it seemed more like 4 years. So we also meet Dee Dee Gordon, who is, she's small and athletic looking with a roundish face dusted lightly with freckles and merry brown eyes that peered out from a glossy dark fringe of bangs. Like, to me, she sounds far more attractive than Patsy, but I guess Patsy's got that, like, tall, elegant, sort of supermodel vibe, whereas Dee Dee has more of a, like, friendly little girl next door vibe, but I think that's nicer. Anyway.
So this actress is exactly how I imagine Dee Dee to look. I think maybe she connected in my mind because her name is Dee Smart, but she really fits the description, I think. Does anyone else have an actor they always think of when it comes to any of the characters in Sweet Valley? I also always imagine their mum to look exactly like Linda Kowalski from Crocodile Dundee.
So it turns out, of course, that Patsy's not just an old friend of Todd's, she's his ex-girlfriend. Now, it is a bit silly. It seems from these books like Todd and Elizabeth meet in high school, so they don't know each other from before then. But then they wrote the prequel, which is Sweet Valley Twins, when they were 12, and Todd is in middle school with Elizabeth. And it's pretty much the same class of kids, lots of familiar names. Like, if you're going to write a prequel, make the logic work, is what I'm saying. Dee Dee is one of the people working on the school play, and it turns out that her father is a hotshot Hollywood agent, which Elizabeth shares, not Dee Dee boasting about it. It does make you wonder why she goes to Sweet Valley High, which is just like a really ordinary school where you would think that if he was that much of a hotshot, she'd be going to some like posh private school. Anyway, maybe he just wants her to mix and be normal. So we cut to the Wakefield house. Jessica is supposed to be cleaning up after dinner, washing the dishes or whatever. But she's like, oh no, I've got to rush out to my date with Tom McKay. Can't Elizabeth do it? So Elizabeth helps her, as always. The parents don't say anything about this. They're just so okay with one daughter always manipulating the other. They just think that's fine. The girls are talking, and Elizabeth, I don't know why she does this, but she's been having a go at Jessica for basically leading Bill on and being all flirty with him and just taking advantage of the fact that he has a big crush on her now. But then she lets slip that, oh, you might have some competition. I think he and Dee Dee were getting on pretty well. And Jessica, of course, is just appalled at the idea that anyone could get in between her and a guy that she depends on to be, you know, all in love with her. So she immediately, like, calls Bill up and invites him over and then goes out on a date with Tom McKay. So Elizabeth is stuck having to sort of explain, like, oh, yeah, sorry, Jess had to go out. It was really urgent. I don't know why she doesn't just say, yeah, she's on a date. I always say this, but why doesn't Elizabeth just get really blunt and honest and start telling people the truth about Jessica instead of making excuses for her? It's annoying. Also, I think it's silly of Elizabeth. I think she's trying to kind of be like, haha, in your face, Jess. But all she does is cause trouble for Bill and Dee Dee by saying that, and she should know that, really. So Bill's just wandering around very sad because Jessica invited him over and then went on a date with Tom. So then we get a reminder of Bill's backstory, which we've already had in the last book, and it was also in the bonus material of one of the previous books. So they really want to hammer it home so we all know what happened to Bill. So he used to go out with a girl called Julianne who looked just like the Wakefield twins, because no one's allowed to be beautiful and desirable unless they're a Wakefield. And long story short, they were going out, they were really happy, but they had an argument one night. She got left home with someone else. They crashed, she died. It was very sad. And of course, because the Wakefield twins look so much like her, that's why he turned Jessica down. It wasn't that he didn't find her attractive or anything like that. Of course, God forbid.
And it says Julianne's eyes were bluer than blue, so deep they were almost purple. Can I just point out, nobody's eyes are purple? I know at the moment we've all got Elizabeth Taylor and Crying Our Eyes Violet just playing continuously in our brains, but Elizabeth Taylor's eyes are as close as you're going to get to it, but they're not really violet either. That's called marketing.
So now we have the full story of why he is a bit of a loner, or maybe he was a bit of a loner before, but yeah, he's not a very happy guy.
Also, it's mentioned that Todd is the closest thing Bill had to a good friend. Well, considering in the last book he asked out Todd's ex-girlfriend basically the minute after she dumped him, I'm not flipping surprised. Maybe he'd have more friends if he wasn't completely unaware of social norms.
So the gang is at the beach. Jessica and her friend Cara are there, and they notice Bill giving Dee Dee surfing lessons, as he promised to. And Cara is kind of needling Jessica, going, haha, he likes her now, not you. And Dee Dee is very talented on the surfboard, apparently, and she's in an eye-catching canary yellow one-piece. She even managed to look alluring enough to make Jessica a little bit nervous. Wow, Dee Dee must be hot stuff. Anyway, she decides that she's going to put a stop to any potential flirtation between them. She just strides out like, hey guys. She is wearing a bronze wet look bikini. Now I remember a bronze wet look swimsuit. I think it was a one piece in another book. So maybe she just has like every kind of swimsuit in every colour. I mean, why not if you live in California and you have a pool? I think I would too. So she gets in between them and basically puts a stop to the sort of budding romance between them. And then when they're back on the beach and Jessica's like, oh, can you rub in some suntan lotion on my back, Bill? You missed a spot. Elizabeth says, this is the most Elizabeth moment, okay? While Dee Dee's looking all upset and Jessica is treating Bill like her suntan servant, it says Elizabeth was even starting to get a little bit angry at Bill for being so blind to Jessica's manipulations. She can talk, and then she gets annoyed because Todd criticises Jessica and it's like, no, that's not allowed. Anyway, Jessica asks Bill to get her some food. She wants a cheeseburger, a double order of fries, oh, and a chocolate milkshake. I shouldn't. She touched one flawless cheek, but I can never resist. It says Elizabeth couldn't remember the last time she'd seen her sister with a pimple. Do milkshakes give people pimples? Was that a belief that people had? I'm not familiar with that, but okay. Anyway, some more kids arrive, including Patsy Webber. And it says Patsy looked positively breathtaking in a bikini that looked as if it consisted of nothing more than 3 tiny scraps of material and a yard or so of string. Elizabeth had never seen anything so daring, except maybe in pictures of the French Riviera. On anyone else it might have looked sleazy, but Patsy managed to appear both elegant and alluring. I mean, let's just remind ourselves, they're 16. All of them, 16. Like, when you're reading this when you're 12, you're like, oh yes, when I'm 16, I'm going to be all alluring too. And then you sort of get to that age and you're like, yeah. Anyway, Patsy decides she's going to go swimming. And it's like, open invitation to everyone. Todd's like, oh yeah, I'll come. Do you want to come, Liz? And then she's like, no, don't want to. I'm sorry, Elizabeth is quite pathetic in this book. We'll give her a break because she was in a coma in the last one, but anyway. She runs into some of her friends, Enid Rollins and Olivia Davidson. And Olivia, who is normally a pretty nice person, she's just really tactless here. She's like, oh yeah, I heard Patsy was back in town. She says, I can remember when Patsy was just a skinny kid, all bones. I never could figure out what Todd saw in her. Sure looks like she really filled out in all the right places though. Wow, I can hardly believe it. That's not something you want to hear. You don't want to know that your boyfriend really loved some unattractive girl for her personality and now she's amazing looking. Like, that's the worst news you could possibly hear. And then it transpires like they didn't really ever break up. It was just that she moved away. So Elizabeth convinces herself that Todd must still be in love with Patsy and she's just like, the whole relationship is doomed. But again, how does Olivia know all this when Elizabeth doesn't? It's a relatively small town. There must have been like another Sweet Valley Middle School where other people went to. I'm just slightly annoyed at the continuity errors, but that's part of the magic of Sweet Valley, that there is no continuity. So we just have to roll with it. Anyway, we have not quite a subplot, but a hint at the next book. Roger Barrett is another guy at the school. He is involved in the play as well, and he has a big crush on Lila, who is a rich snobby girl who is not interested in him at all. And Dee Dee sort of notices this because she has a big crush on Bill. She feels a sense of kinship with Roger, that they both have these like unrequited crushes. And every time Dee Dee and Bill are chatting away, getting on really well, Jessica will come over and insert herself. So, you know, for Jessica, we're always being told how irresistible she is. She seems to have to do a lot of manipulating to get guys to be interested in her. Like, if Bill was that keen on her, wouldn't it just happen naturally, without her having to always insert herself into his conversations with other girls? So Elizabeth and Todd sort of witness, you know, Dee Dee running out, looking upset after Jessica's gone over and interrupted her and Bill. Todd makes a critical comment and Elizabeth blows up at him. It's obviously, she's basically got this like paranoia about Patsy niggling away in the back of her mind. So she runs into her best friend Enid, who gives her just very good advice. So Enid references her own boyfriend George. She says, if an old girlfriend of George's suddenly popped up looking like a clone of Bo Derek, I'd be worried too. This is like, I think it's the 3rd mention of Bo Derek. So Bo Derek watch for Sweet Valley High. Number 3. And Enid just basically says, why don't you just talk to him about it? Because you're like driving yourself crazy and it's all in your imagination at the moment. And then meanwhile, Todd is giving Bill a bit of a pep talk. And he actually gives him really good advice about this like ridiculous situation with Jessica where he kind of blushes and stammers every time he sees her, and she's just like playing him for a fool essentially. Todd points out that like with him and Elizabeth, they have a friendship at the basis of their relationship, and that's kind of what you should be aiming for, not someone who just like treats you like crap. So that gives Bill something to think about. So Bill and Dee Dee are meant to go surfing, but Jessica invites Bill to her party instead. So Bill drops Dee Dee, goes over to the Wakefields, and then Jessica drops him because Tom McKay's there and he's the guy she's actually dating. And Bill kind of becomes aware of this. He literally thinks to himself, oh, she's dropped me the way I dropped Dee Dee. Okay, so we definitely have some Wakefield worship here. Elizabeth finds her dad, he's working in his office, and Elizabeth was struck, as she often was, by how athletic her father looked for someone who spent so much of his time at a desk poring over legal briefs. He was tall enough to be a basketball player, with the densely muscled trimness of a swimmer or track star. Wow, so he's like 3 different kinds of athletes. As tall as a basketball player, what? Like, wouldn't that make him like 6'5" or something? Like, he's really tall. I had no idea. So Elizabeth comes home to find everyone who was at the rehearsals is hanging out in her backyard. So she puts on her striped 2-piece bathing suit. No more details than that. Striped with what colours? I know. She goes outside and she sees her boyfriend rubbing suntan lotion onto Patsy. She was stretched in golden queenly splendour on the
days long.
She was on her stomach and the back ties of her bikini top was undone. Todd was rubbing suntan lotion on her back with slow circular strokes. That is a bit dodgy, isn't it? I mean, there's rubbing suntan lotion on your friend, and there's your ex-girlfriend with her bikini top untied and doing it really slowly. I think he has crossed the line into weird behaviour that most girls, women, females, would not appreciate. Anyway, Elizabeth, being a wimp, just runs inside and locks herself in the bathroom. That's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Don't everyone know you're that upset by it? Anyway, Jessica comes to comfort her and of course just makes it worse. Like, oh yeah, they do seem really close, don't they? And then she's like, oh, if he is in love with her, it's probably just temporary anyway. So she's so unhelpful. Anyway, tiny subplot when Elizabeth needs to drop something off at her dad's office and she finds Roger Barrett there and he's the janitor. And he's embarrassed to be caught cleaning. And she's like, oh, you know, don't worry, that's really good that you've got like a job. It's great that you're ambitious. And he's like, it's not ambition, it's like survival. My family needs the money. And it's just a reminder that everyone doesn't have the comfortable middle class lifestyle that the Wakefields have. So we have quite a few 80s references in this book after having, I think, none in the last one. So Jessica and Lila are talking about acting and how Jessica wants to be a star. Lila says, oh, if you want to know the truth, they offered me the lead role in Raiders of the Lost Ark before Karen Allen, but I had to turn it down. So they're talking about Harrison Ford, and Jessica decides that if she's a film star, Elizabeth can be her stunt double, and that will leave her free for the juicy stuff like kissing Harrison. So Dee Dee makes this announcement that her father, the hotshot Hollywood agent, he's dropped by to watch the rehearsal for this school play, and he thinks that somebody there is really talented. And of course, Jessica assumes it's her, and this is Hollywood is beckoning. Another little 80s reference, he's going to bring his friend to watch the play, and it's the same guy who discovered Matt Dillon. Lila is talking about how cool it would be if Jessica was paired up with Matt Dillon in a movie. And she says, too immature. I was thinking more along the lines of Sylvester Stallone. And Lila makes a little joke about Roger Barrett, the guy who has a big crush on her. She says, he does bear a striking resemblance to Robert Redford, don't you agree? Robert Redford was obviously a big crush of someone who's writing these books, because we always get the reference of Mr. Collins looking like him and how dreamy he is. Anyway, Jessica is so excited by the idea that she's going to launch her career that she just thinks, I don't even care if Bill and Dee Dee get together, because what does he matter compared with stardom? This has got to be the best Jessica moment. Jessica had changed out of her costume into a pale blue sundress and had put on fresh lipstick that carried a faint perfumey smell. She was, as usual, breathtaking. Since Elizabeth caught Todd rubbing suntan lotion in Patsy's back, she's been avoiding him and he keeps like chasing around trying to get hold of her. Enid told her she was being silly and childish about the whole thing, but Elizabeth wasn't so sure. Enid is so much more mature. I always say this, but it's always true. Elizabeth is just a very silly girl sometimes. She's a silly little girl, isn't she? But to be fair, it does seem like Elizabeth has a point, because Enid's like, he was just rubbing suntan lotion on her, and she's like, it's the way he was doing it. Which I think is a fair point, because it did sound like he was, you know, crossing a boundary, really. And then Elizabeth sees them together and he has his arms around Patsy, and it says he was stroking Patsy's back and murmuring something in her ear. So again, very hard to imagine how this is all going to have an innocent explanation. I mean, of course it will because it's Todd, but you know, I don't think Elizabeth is being unreasonable in finding this hurtful. So Bill asks Jessica to the after party for after their performance, and she's like, no, I'm going with Tom. And then she's like, why don't you ask Dee Dee? I'll bet she'd go out with you in a minute. Jessica's being bitchy and kind of like, he'd be desperate enough to go out with you. But it actually kind of does Dee Dee a favour because Bill's like, I guess I could ask Dee Dee. And also he's like, well, when I'm with Dee Dee, I don't feel awkward and stupid all the time, like we're buddies. Which is a great basis for a relationship. Anyway, Dee Dee and Bill go out to practice surfing and the water is a little bit rough. And it says, Bill was so lost in his misery over Jessica, it was several crucial seconds before he noticed that Dee Dee had vanished from sight. So she's wiped out and she almost drowns. But you'll be pleased to know the good news is she gets a boyfriend out of the situation because Bill saves her, gives her the kiss of life, and then he just kisses her. So they declare their love for each other and he's just like, oh, who's Jessica? Which is satisfying, isn't it? So they perform the play. Jessica is spellbinding, and it says, even handsome Tom McKay had paled somewhat in comparison to the Warren Beatty types she would soon be linked with. Let Bill have Dee Dee, she thought. Those two nerds deserved each other. But then, of course, it turns out that this agent thinks Bill is incredibly talented. So there's a big commotion around Bill that he has discovered, essentially. So then Jessica starts thinking, okay, well, if I can't be a star myself, I can hitch my wagon to Bill. I'd still get to go to Hollywood and go to all the parties and stuff. So she starts really laying it on thick and being like, oh, Bill, you're so wonderful. And it says the funny part was, Jessica was actually starting to believe the flattery she was heaping on Bill. The edge had worn off her anger and she was beginning to see him in a new light. He was actually much handsomer than she'd ever realised. Had his eyes always been so blue? She could imagine him blown up 100 times on a movie screen. With his light blonde hair, he could almost be a young Robert Redford. Everyone doesn't look like Robert Redford, okay? Brad Pitt does, that's about it. I'll allow Mr. Collins, but I mean, Bill doesn't look anything like Robert Redford. To me, Bill will just always look like he does on this cover. Anyway, Jessica kind of ditches Tom, makes a play for Bill, and of course Dee Dee runs off crying because that's all that any girl ever does when some girl is making a play for her boyfriend, apparently, in Sweet Valley. No one's very assertive here. So Roger's there and he sort of comforts Dee Dee and they're both like, yeah, we're both miserable, aren't we? We're both unlucky in love. So Elizabeth agrees to go to the party because she assumes that Todd is now dating Patsy, but she's like, oh well, I'll just have to get used to seeing them everywhere together, so I might as well start now, which is actually not a bad attitude to have. And when she arrives, Patsy's there looking stunning in a low-cut halter-top jumpsuit made of some shimmery peach-coloured fabric. And Patsy's like, have you seen Todd? And Elizabeth, you know, understandably is like, wow, that's really insensitive. Because even if Patsy isn't dating Todd, she should probably have noticed that he and Elizabeth haven't been hanging out. She did know that they were together. Maybe she just thinks they never spend time together at school. I don't know. Anyway, Elizabeth goes outside to cry. It must be like a garden just full of people crying over their lost loves. Suddenly she jumped as a pair of strong arms closed around her from behind, trapping her arms against her sides. It's no use trying to escape, Todd's voice was husky against her ear. I'm not letting you loose until you tell me what's going on. Liz, are you trying to break up with me? I think Todd does channel Edward Cullen quite a bit. He's very masterful, isn't he? So anyway, long story short, he says, no. I was hugging Patsy because she was crying because she got dumped by her long-distance boyfriend and I only want to be with you. And yeah, as usual, it's a pretty standard Elizabeth and Todd make-up thing. So when Bill sees Dee Dee come in, Jessica's kind of trying to snuggle up to him on the sofa and he just stands up like, oh, there's Dee Dee. Jessica is still trying to kind of be like, oh, Bill, let's make plans for that when we're next going to get together. And he's just like, actually, I'm only going to be with Dee Dee from now on. So basically everything has gone wrong for Jessica in one night. And she starts blushing and it says, it was rare for her to blush, but when it happened, it was a major Technicolor event. So that is her comeuppance for this book, just blushing in front of everyone. So then Tom McKay, who Jessica kind of unceremoniously dumped earlier, he gets together with Patsy. So that's a happy ending for everyone, isn't it? I don't think Patsy's ever actually mentioned again, or I don't recall her name coming up, but we'll find out in future books. And then we have the lead up to the next book. So Roger Barrett has his big crush on Lila, as we know. Her friends are kind of teasing her about it. And she says, I wouldn't dance with Roger Barrett if he were the last boy on earth. and unfortunately that happens at a lull in the party, so it's really loud and everyone hears, including poor Roger. I don't know if this makes my book very rare and valuable, but at the back it says Roger and Lila have big surprises in store for them in Sweet Valley High, number 9, Love on the Run. And that is not the title of the next book, it's actually Racing Hearts. So I guess they changed the title after they printed these books. So yeah, that's weird, because you assume that they would have already got like the cover and everything designed and printed. So intriguing. If anyone watching this was involved in the production of Sweet Valley High books, do please let us know the secrets of how it all came together. So that was book 8. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you for liking the video, thank you for subscribing to the channel, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye!